Which one of these ready-to-run RC drift cars are really the smartest choice? The Yokomo, the MST, or the Redcat? I'm here today to answer this very question. There's always a curiosity out there of which one is better. The MST RMX has owned this market for years now. That's been the only real viable alternative. Yokomo came out with a cheaper alternative just a few months ago, and now here we are with the Redcat RDS. So that really begs the question, if you were going to get a ready-to-run drift car right now, which one should it be? To answer this question, I'm looking at 11 different things in order to figure out which one is the best choice. Let's get started. We're starting at the very bottom with the chassis. Both the Yokomo and the MST, as they come out of the box, are plastic chassis. Now, there's nothing actually really wrong with a plastic chassis, but one of the things that you will eventually do is upgrade to a carbon fiber chassis. The Redcat here is actually the only one that comes from the factory with a carbon fiber chassis. So that means for category number 1, chassis core material and design, win goes to Redcat. The next aspect that we're looking at is actually the motor and the ESC on these vehicles. The one that really stands out here is the Yokomo. So both the Redcat and the MST come non-censored brushless setups. The Yokomo actually does come with a brushed setup. The brush setup's not bad. This is not a bad thing overall. I've actually been very pleased with how this car does and the power that it has with the brushed setup, but it is not as durable or efficient as the brushless setups that are offered by the others. So that means detraction here to Yokomo, edge goes to both the MST and the Redcat. Long term, if you're really interested in RC drifting, you're going to replace all the motor and ESC combos in all these units, so it's not really a killer, the setups that these come with, or that Yokomo has a brushed setup in it. You're going to end up going censored, something that gives you turbo and boost anyway eventually, so it's not a big deal. The next piece that we're talking about is actually going to be the servo itself. One of the things that happens very commonly with the MST servo in these vehicles is as soon as you upgrade the gyro or the controller or something like that, you end up frying the stock servo. Unfortunately, the Yokomo is actually in the same boat. Both of these end up getting replaced very quickly. The Redcat, the jury's still out on this right now. We don't know. There's not been enough long-term durability tested with this gyro to really know. However, I am guessing, based on what I know about what's gone into the development of this servo, I'm guessing that it's going to be just fine even with a gyro upgrade or any other changes that you do to the car. Thinking win of this servo competition goes to the Redcat. Next on the list is the gyro, which is of course very critical when it comes to rear-wheel drive drifting, is what gyro you're using and how it's set up. Out of the 3 of these vehicles, we only really have one clear loser as it sits right now, which is the Yokomo. It comes with the worst gyro of the group, and in fact this new Hexfly GX1 looks eerily similar maybe to some of the MGX that is in all of the new MST 2.5 ready to runs. So I'm going to call these probably a tie between the Redcat and the MST. The Yokomo is a clear loser in this bracket. Next up is weight and weight bias over the rear wheels. I am a very big fan of reducing weight on drift cars as much as humanly possible. Less weight means better performance. As I weighed them, no body and no battery, but with the standard chassis on all of these other vehicles, I ended up at 1,140 grams on the Redcat. I ended up almost the same, 1136 on the MST. Literally only 4 grams between these two cars. That's basically zero. And as it came out of the box, the Yokomo was 1034. So it was 100 grams lighter than either one of these two straight out of the box. Now what you'll see is that advantage actually grows, because as I noted earlier, the Redcat actually comes with the carbon fiber chassis straight out of the box. These two didn't, and once I have modified them and actually put some pretty cheap carbon fiber chassis on both of them, this Yokomo is now actually down under 1,000 grams at 977, and the MST is just over the 1,000 at 1080. And so there, at the end of the day, for weight and then modified weight, the Yokomo really is the winner. We don't have a modified weight for the Redcat because it doesn't have modifications yet, and it's already carbon fiber. There's nothing there to do. In addition to both of those weight metrics, we also have a weight bias, and that is how much of the weight is on the rear of the vehicle. You will hear arguments all over the internet as to what the right answer is for this. I don't believe there truly is a right answer. Maybe there's some rules and regulations in your area. But for me and how I drive, I want as much over the rear tires as humanly possible to give me as much traction. And what we see here is as the cars are sitting, we got with no battery and no body, I have 60% rear weight bias on the MST, 63% on the Yokomo, 67% on the Redcat. So that gives a win to the Redcat. The next category is the factory controller that the cars come with. And there's one simple answer to this. They all lose. There's no winner here. They all suck. None of the controllers that come with any of these ready to runs are ones that you will want to use long term. All of them get you started. None of them allow you to adjust the gyro gain from the controller live and really make it precise. And you will upgrade all of them at some point. The next category is actually the quality of the body. I am specifically speaking about quality here, not design, not aesthetics, quality. So what does quality mean? How durable is the body? What accessories are included? That type of thing. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and so I am not speaking on your behalf of what you think looks good or bad. How thick is it? How durable does it appear to be? We're also looking at, are there any kind of plastic features, you know, kind of scale details. Now you can't, on this Redcat, I added the wipers, I added the mirrors, I added these little vents, but it did come with this rear spoiler, the front spoiler, the rear diffuser with a tow hook in it, so those are nice. And the body so far has felt like a nice quality, durable, thick body. The MST here, very good. If you only knew the amount of heck that this MST has been put through, and the body still looks good. It's finally starting to get some cracks here on the edges. It has light buckets, it has mirrors, it has a wing, it has all of this stuff. Very detailed, very good looking body, and has been durable. On the not gonna win this category section is the Yokomo. They came with body holes already pre-drilled. It's been a very, very flimsy body that even in a very short period of time has already got a lot of cracks and a lot of divots. I was actually going to put a bunch of SRC scale items on this body and then purposely didn't because it's already falling apart. So Yokomo is the clear loser here. Redcat comes in second. MST is the winner. The next aspect that we're going to be talking about here is adjustability. So you're looking at, do we have adjustability from the turnbuckles, the control arms? Can we set caster angle both front and rear of the vehicle? The MST comes in with fixed links, and so that is kind of a detractor there. Both the Redcat and the Yokomo actually come fully adjustable with multiple adjustment options both on the shock towers and on the hubs on both of the vehicles. So Redcat and the Yokomo get a tie here. MST does not get any points in this round. Now there's a caveat on this category though, and that is because sometimes providing adjustability to new drivers is actually a bad thing. The number of times in which I have seen some folks maybe buy an MST, immediately throw a turnbuckle kit on it, and then screw it up is a lot. And so maybe there is something to be said for especially new drivers having the ability to not mess anything up until they get more familiar with what they're doing, and then dump into that. There's some benefit there, but still overall at the end of the day, adjustability matters because otherwise you're going to end up spending money on an MST turnbuckle kit at some point, And that is not free. Next up is the shock setup on all of these vehicles, and this is actually a very big difference across them. The Yokomo kind of comes in last place here because it's a friction shock, no oil in these things whatsoever. The MST, I actually have already upgraded the shocks on these. They come with a plastic shock out of the package, which is not bad. It is at least an oil-filled plastic shock, but it is something that you upgrade eventually. The best shock setup across all of these here is actually this Redcat. It is sitting in droop. It is feeling great. Honestly, they did a really good job with the spring and shock setup on here. Of the three of them, it is the winner for sure. This next category is all about upgrades and how much aftermarket support there is for each car. And really, at the end of the day, both the MST and the Yokomo have a lot of support out there for them. The Redcat is just new, so it does not have as much aftermarket support for it yet. Although, we're already starting to see signs of maybe some of the Yokomo upgrades actually do maybe apply to the Redcat. So I'm starting to see some folks trying to test those waters out. If I'm going to give a tiebreaker between the MST and the Yokomo for aftermarket support, it's going to go to the Yokomo. There's more companies out there that are offering things like the RWD MC1 chassis conversion kit and things like it. It seems like the general aftermarket for RC Drift is a little bit more Yokomo focused, so that means it's going to get the nod here in this category. Next up is the rear differential. It is better to have an open differential of some form versus a locked diff. Both the Yokomo and the Redcat come with open gear differentials, which is my preferred differential in their vehicles. The MST comes locked, and you will end up having to pay later for their upgraded ball diff instead of the locked diff, and so Yokomo and Redcat both get points in this category. As a ready-to-run drift car, one of the most important items to get people started in drifting is price. In the initial purchase price category, the Yokomo clearly wins, $329 versus the MST at $389 and the Redcat at $399. So these basically the same price. Honestly, $10 out of $380 and $390 doesn't matter. These are the same price. This one's that $60, $70 cheaper, so it definitely wins. But it gets more interesting because the Yokomo is also the only one that comes with a battery and charger. Yes, it is a nickel metal battery, and yes, it is a horrible charger. Both of those things are true, but it runs and it does well. I even proved this by keeping the nickel metal battery in this thing for the first couple months and making everybody drive it and show that turns out the nickel metal battery was fine for most of what you were doing with the lower powered motor and ESC setup in there. So that means both the MST and the Redcat, you're gonna have to spend probably another $100 to buy a battery and charger to go along with it. So that really increases that price gap even more and gives another point to the Yokomo. Lastly, with price though, is the upgraded price. And so what I mean by that is if you turns out you like drifting, you're gonna start putting upgrades on these cars. I already showed you the carbon fiber chassis that I have on them. You're gonna end up maybe upgrading the servo and the gyro. You're gonna end up upgrading the controller. These kind of things you're going to end up doing. And some of these cars need more of it than not. Like we said earlier, all three of these are going to eventually get a new controller. A carbon fiber chassis, you ditch the body mounts and go to a magnetic body mount system like I have on all of mine. Gyro and servo. So what does all of this look like from a price comparison standpoint? It's really, really interesting when you add it all up. So the MST, once it is all upgraded, I get to a total of about $954. So pretty hefty price tag there. And what's interesting is for both the Yokomo and the Redcat, I get to a price that's within $5 of each one of them. It's really interesting. I get to a total of $794 for the Yokomo and $789 for the Redcat. So through this whole upgrade process and everything that we're doing, we actually end up spending more on the MST than we do on the other two cars in the long run, giving them a little bit more of an advantage. We've gone through all of these items now, and where do we come down to the final verdict? I classified each one of these categories and I gave points out to if that chassis, if that vehicle won that category or tied for first. And really interesting, the MST is definitely coming in third place. Really kind of surprised by this, being the one that kind of started this whole thing. But price really hurt it overall with the upgrades that you need, the shocks, like all this kind of stuff. Ended up non-adjustability. All of these things really ended up hurting it and definitely letting it fall down the ranks in total points. So then that leaves the Yokomo versus the Redcat. And when you score everything, the Yokomo gets a bunch of points due to its price and upgradability and aftermarket, but just narrowly edging it out is actually the Redcat. When you look at the categories that we went through in this video, the Redcat actually barely edges out, by 1 point, edges out the Yokomo. Honestly though, all three of these chassis could be really good no matter what. And at the end of the day, if you really get into RC drifting kind of like I am, you're probably going to own all of them at some point anyway. So you don't really have to stress about it that much. I called it as basically a tie between the Yokomo and the Redcat, but maybe depending on what your values are with some of those categories, maybe that sways you one way or another even more. So what is more important to you from all of those categories that I talked about, and does that change the answer at all? Let me know down in the comments. And do you think I got any of these things wrong? Do you think I misjudged any of these categories? You can let me know there too. So thanks for watching. I hope this was useful for you. We'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.